Hello, here we are in another episode of No Art, No Life. I'm Jack Cole, here with my great friend and colleague, Mr. David Duvall. Hello, David.
Jack, good to talk to you again. We've already had a nice talk today.
We did, so it's a pleasure to continue.
Yeah, it's so, I think, important for us, certainly not necessarily for our audience, but for us to do this, and since we can do it, we like doing it.
Yes.
And maybe some of these ideas, which are often not scathing with, human names that we're all conditioned to hate or love, is not among this, but real ideas. I remember that last week we discussed wonderfully certain aspects of romanticism with women and men.
Yes.
Yes, and you want to go on with that just for a second, perhaps? Because I have a really interesting thing to read about Jane Austen's view of this. And Jane Austen is certainly one of the great symbols of women writers.
Well, I'd love to hear it. Should we begin with the Austen then? Because I don't know what...
because it just hit me because I
Yes.
was reading this incredibly excellent essay by The Myth of Jane Austen by Geoffrey Gorer, Gorer. I don't know who he is. He's probably an important intellectual of the 50s or 60s.
Okay.
But we were talking about men being more romantic than women and so forth. So anyway, he's writing here, I have seen it suggested somewhere that Bernard Shaw owes much of his success to the fact that he refuses to take love seriously. And Mr. Maugham has written that, quote, "The English are not a sexual nation, and you cannot easily persuade them that a man will sacrifice anything important for love." Well, what about King Edward the Eighth? I mean, didn't he like the girl from Baltimore more than the kingdom of the greatest empire that had ever been assembled?
Yes.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, Mom, of course, knew this. And what I do like is the fact that he goes out on the limb, it's not a sexual nation. I always felt that it was not in the women, but in the men. I don't know. This is very controversial, very deep, very psychological.
And you feel as Americans that we're more, as men, conditioned to sacrifice our kingdoms for a woman?
Yes, because the class consciousness in England is much more so. There's I'm going to really shock you if I do this or that. Here, the shock value at all times, no matter what part of history, has been less than what other countries. It's really shocking how many men leave their wives without even giving them a phone number of where they are.
In this culture.
In this culture. And then they will just go on to the next woman and have the next family. This is not happening very much in Denmark or Sweden. There will always be a man leaving the next day because he couldn't stand it, and he's not going to go through the hubbub of legal separations. But in America, the statistics are absolutely incredible. Every day, almost every hour, there are thousands of men just leaving forever.
Now, if you say in the old world there is a mechanism in place to prevent at least the superficial shattering of the union, if one has an artist personality within the framework of the freedom that we enjoy in terms of a kind of a cultural imagination here, without the impression of an old world kingdom keeping the family together, what protects a man, perhaps, then, from sacrificing his kingdom as an artist to the destroyer?
And what does the destroyer mean?
Anything, but I have found it in my life, usually, that when people have stepped in to protect me, so to speak, that the chink in my armor is woman. that it has the greatest potential to throw one off one's track?
The definite greatest potential of all. Imagine if Beethoven actually married. We would have no Hammerklavier. He would be worried about domestic things. He lived in a filthy atmosphere. He fired his domestic servants day and night, and he had one thing on his mind, and he could get that out, especially in a city that was literally a brothel like Vienna, an underworld that was a demi-monde that was so vast. And he would deny it, Beethoven. I mean, when I say he would deny it, I have no proof for that. The only proof is that I feel I know his personality so much, so well. Am I right? Am I wrong? It doesn't matter. But the point is that this guy was a great romantic. No woman ever wrote to me or to Beethoven a Moonlight Sonata type of letter where the man was, so obsessed with her. And yet when it comes down to marrying anyone, he could say, make sure if you find one for me that she's a beauty. That kind of thing in our time is like superficiality. What do you mean? Who cares about a beauty? We want a wonderful woman, a person, an equal. No, Beethoven wanted a beauty. Well, Beethoven must have deep down felt he was worth a beauty.
Do we know for sure what he meant by a beauty?
A beauty was a physically beautiful woman. Nothing more. Nothing more. He, certainly a man that wrote music of such exquisiteness and beautifulness and every other kinds of beauty. There was hundreds of thousands of forms of beauty in all of his music. You cannot even say there are 10 of them. There's hundreds of thousands. They're magnificent. These are not portraits of women. These are portraits of a man immersed in the beauty that we talked about last time, that man sees women as beautiful. That's their standard. So he was just saying, make sure she's a beauty.
And yet we're warned now, if we perceive or even celebrate to a woman her beauty, that to a degree we're falling into the old archetype of rendering them into an object.
Yes, well, so what?
That's what I would imagine.
There's no big deal about being an object. The piano is an object, and look at what's been composed for it. I'm an object, and I get my paint brush, and there it is. A Etruscan man smelling a flower, with a chaplain mustache, perhaps. All this comes from the unconscious, the blue one. And so I'm an object of my unconscious wanting to get my hand working. And it works with such superb quality indeed, I believe. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. But I certainly deserve to say my works are quality. Anyone has that right, as they say. But most important is that I'm doing it, and I am not hindered. If I'm hindered, it will never be created. So of course, Brahms is not going to have a family. He's engaged 4 or 5 times. 2 beautiful women, and he certainly wants Clara Schumann as his wife, and she knows she's very wise. No. Maybe I'll give you my daughter Julie. She's going to maybe please you. But Brahms is absolutely unhappy with that idea. He wants her. She's beauty. What is she? Not only beautiful physically. That's not important to Brahms. She's a great artist who plays his music better than anyone. So I don't know. It's such a complex question, and I'm losing touch with it.
No, because it makes me ask this question. In a society where the physical outlet that a Brahms or a Beethoven would have still had to furtively seek, I imagine. I don't think they were intimating in the drawing room that they would seek out a brothel to say that was their means of physical relief. But
well, Brahms lived in brothels.
Right.
He really was there all the time.
But what I'm arguing now, we live in a society now where, in a sense, that's almost unnecessary. We imagine that the freedoms are such that one wouldn't have to have recourse to still maintaining a kind of middle-class image. But in terms of seeking out physical contact from a woman, you don't necessarily have to go to a brothel. But here's my question. If a man is still a romantic, what protects him from his own impulse to have to elevate the connection to some degree of permanence so that he still feels that he's fulfilling the gallant role, even in a society that doesn't demand it of him anymore? And what does he do? How does he protect himself if he also knows that in order to elevate this gallantry, he's going to have to commit to an alliance that ultimately will destroy him?
Absolutely destroy him, yeah.
So who are the protectors now for an artist in this scenario where there's nothing preventing him from staying out of that bind, and yet his own personality, who wants to bring a kind of gentility and beauty to woman, he's still going to feel he has to bring some sense of the romantic to it. So what road can he follow?
What rule?
What road?
What road can he follow?
Lest one end up being a Gatsby staring at a green light.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, it's so difficult because our society is none, maybe more sexual than I was reading before about the English society doesn't care about sex, as Mom said, but the United States has been conditioned to fetishize sex in every aspect of the world. You know, you can go walk and you see the bus stops, you know, and there's a man, you know, totally nude. You see his nipples, and he's wearing the Calvin Kleins, you know, and he's muscular. He's in the gym every day of his life doing this ridiculous repetition. But the romantic man is, and I will have to disagree with you a bit. He's not getting the sex that even the ones that want it, which no longer do they even want it. Believe me, men, I've talked about them with them. They can't be bothered. They cannot encounter the difficulty of sex with a woman. It's too tough. The woman has too many strictures, too many things that she must be treated as
today.
Equality, on and on. And he's also facing something so fantastic. No country, not any country, has ever been as puritanical as this one. So this kind of puritanical quality will give him that ability to stop and help himself and protect himself, because he still has this amazing form of 19th century gallantry where, you know, you have to be a woman that's a virgin, at least a virgin, as Quentin Bell said, as I said last time, a virgin had to be someone who played the piano.
Right.
You put a cultural thing in it, which says she played the piano, which means she taught her children. There was some form of music, some form of the finer things in life. And but in America, oh no! I mean, you can't just go out there and say, "Here I am. I'm Steve Reeves, Mr. World."
So, in other words, in a way, there is a benign quality to our Puritan heritage as a protector for the gallant artist.
Yes, the gallant artist and the gallant religioso.
Yes,
I'll call him, the person who's, you know, oh my goodness, God would and Jesus and everyone else will really be happy with my ability not to give in to this incredible instinct that must be given into. If not, you are going to die of it.
So it's a tremendous paradox for the gallant.
And it's for the artist. He has so many images. Oh yes, all of every pianist says, well, why did you play the piano? Someone asked a well-known pianist. Oh, I played the piano for the girls. He's a harmless sex symbol. He's not. Madame Blessington said, oh, it's a great shame that a man so beautiful as Liszt has to be trapped at a piano. You see, he's playing for everyone, and he's the sex symbol, but he's not getting what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
He's just getting their, their adoration of his virtuosity. Now, Liszt had to take real time to use his celebrityhood. He's the first to know how, along with the violinist Paganini. This celebrityhood was a magnificent, along with his virtuosity, way of seduction of women. And to this day, any pianist can play for a rock and roll lover, Liebestrom of Liszt,
Yes.
and she will melt. I don't mean she'll melt in his arms, because he has to be playing it.
Right. So you still think that has the same currency as in terms of a peacock feather, even despite the musical taste of today?
It has some potency left. It's amazing how certain pieces of music stab the whole human race at the same moment.
I agree.
Just like a great pianist or orchestra or conductor or violinist will literally take the 4,000 people, and the Brahms concerto will be, of those 4,000 people in Carnegie or wherever, they will all be listening on a higher level than they usually do, because they almost always know the piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's 40 minutes of difficult listening, and yet it's one of the most passionate works, and we hear it, and we are captivated on an aesthetic level, not a sexual level. Brahms is really never sexy, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Never wants to be. Very chaste. And but doesn't mean that he does not have nobility that just conquers all.
Mm-hmm.
The opening of the two great concertos for piano, the Brahms, so you know you're in for one of the great adventures in the world. No art, no life. You can't live without these pieces, and please don't think I'm a snob or trying to tell all of you that, you're inferior to me if you don't know these things. Anyone can know them, and they're more than in the public domain. Everyone they really must go, not to church, but to Brahms, to Beethoven, and listen to what is given to you for free by the thousands of hours of practice of the violinist or the pianist or the conductor. And that conductor, he may be a louse, or he may be a wondrous man like Bruno Walter or whatever, but he knows that in this entrance, in this beginning, you're going to have a masterpiece that will feed all people. Don't have to know any analysis of it, or you don't have to know read any books about it. You don't have to know it's Allegro so-and-so. Listen to it. It will make you a different person. And this is not some propaganda. I have seen people just change their lives. They couldn't believe what one little 4-minute piece would do to them. Mm-hmm. Oscar Wilde talks about it in his magnificent articles on criticism. Mm-hmm. And so forth. We're talking about, and we always must remember, no art, no life. I'm not interested in Congress. I'm interested in how many people are going to get rid of all of that and start thinking on a much wider level, that the Brahms or Beethoven or Mahler or anything that you decide, Bach, will breed in you almost instantaneously a new you. I am really giving you a new chance, because every time I listen to a masterpiece, I have just given myself a new chance at life. I'm so tired all the time. I'm so bored because life is boring. You know anything about life? You know it's boring. Isaac Singer said, more people die of monotony than anything.
Well, let me ask you this. My reading for the week becomes animated by our discussions. Mm-hmm. And if you're talking about the degree of salvation that the artist brings us, I wanted to ask your gut reaction to two propositions that I came across in The Great Chain of Being of Arthur Lovejoy. And I'm going to read them separately. I'll read the first one to you, and then after you respond to the first one, I'll read you the second. And I'm reading them to you as painter. Thus Augustine, in a curious chapter, observes that the supreme art of God is manifested in the variety of the things that it has fashioned out of nothing, while the inferiority of human art is shown in its limited ability to reproduce this diversity of natural objects. Augustine then seems on the point of deriving a species of aesthetic theory from the principle of plenitude. The function of art, he suggests, is to imitate or parallel this diversity of the created world as nearly exhaustively as possible. And this, the argument manifestly implies, is truly an imitatio Dei, and therefore par excellence a religious exercise. So if the argument of this book is, in a sense, there are two kind of conceptions, if I really were to simplify it, of the creator or a creator, one that is self-satisfied in meditating itself, or one that is compelled to be prolific in creating something of a reflection of matter of itself. And of course that would include the artist as part of his creation. Do you feel, in a sense, that it's part of that imitation of the infinite plenitude that is moving and driving you always to conceive of new work?
In my own case, I'm always amazed at what the creative unconscious tells me. And it's really, is, if you have the genetic talent, please don't think that anyone can just pick up a paintbrush and do a masterpiece like Cézanne. These people worked and saw and looked at things in such a deep way. They wanted very much to be able to imitate God, who takes from nothingness, as they say, and builds these universes. Imagine, has there ever been a landscape painter that can compare with the actual physical beauty of the earth at its, before it's destroyed? No, the earth, the mountains, the sky, no, it's just too beautiful, and you have no choice but to want to, as an interpreter, as a pianist playing Beethoven, or a painter looking at the Dutch landscape, and he wants to show you, and he does, with an amazing amount of definite reasoning to imitate. He wants to make sure that it's exact. His paint in that brown, that burnt umber, you go to the bark and you will see it's exact. They knew how to do that. And it's all great. It's all important, and we have a great treasury in every, from the Chinese landscapes to the Zen paintings to Hokusai to every nation has contributed to the landscape, and so beautifully. Then one day a photographer says, you don't need to do that.
So it's the camera that ruins the attempt to try to imitate the creative impulse of God?
Yes, the camera being a man-made instrument, very, very, in the beginnings, interesting. They're the daguerreotypes of, let's say, Chopin. That no painting of him can ever show the torture of that specific. But you see, the Daguerre was a painter. He knew how to understand the face. We haven't had anyone do good faces realistically for years, but also you don't need to. Just like in my preface to my new book, that you've helped me so much with, the painting, the drawings of David Duval. of which I love every one of them, every line. It's the bounding line that Blake talks about. And so here we have Gertrude Stein posing 7 or 8 times for Picasso, and he's done with the painting. He's proud of it. He looks at his idol, Miss Stein, and he says, "Here it is." And she does what every crass dilettante in the world has ever done, who's had their painting made in front of them. "It doesn't look like me, Pablo." Pablo being a much greater artist than her, certainly visually, he says, "Oh, it will. It will." And indeed, there is no image of Gertrude Stein that I have except this puffy, stupid bourgeois American Baltimorean compared to the magnificent, almost cubistic marvels that a genius of the level of Picasso could give you. You could stare at that 20 hours. You can come away with it hypnotized on your eyeballs.
Now, in a way, is Picasso taking the leap of plenitude in the sense of parts of the creation that we can't see? This book, in a way, argues how even centuries back, religious figures, scientists were already speculating on the notion that if there's an infinite cosmos, there are probably infinite planets with infinite manifestations of arrangements of matter. So do you think someone like a Picasso is taking that leap for us to picture the things that an infinite creative energy could create somewhere else, but we don't have, with our limited ability to travel, to see? Now, does he then make a leap of conceit that the contradictory lines that follow here, that I'm going to read to you now? It says, "But here the saint checks himself and reverts violently to the ascetic and otherworldly side of his doctrine. Not that those who fashion such works of art are to be highly esteemed, nor those who take delight in them. For when the soul is thus intent upon the lesser things, things corporeal, which it makes by corporeal means, it is the less fixed upon the supreme wisdom from which it derives these very powers." So do we think when the camera compelled people of genius like Picasso, in a sense, to rearrange forms of nature, is that a fair generalization from someone like myself? To see how matter could be realized in ways that we imagine a God or the first principle of nature ordained them normally to be seen. Is that an act of conceit, as is being reproached here, or
I don't see it as reproached. I think it's a man groping for something that would happen in modernity. This
All
is,
right.
say, you know,
Yeah.
because Picasso is we know, not only him, of course, Modigliani, everyone that dealt with any painting after Cezanne, they were understanding that they did not have to make anything realistic at all, and that this was now such a freedom from the photograph that was being produced. Who would want to ever paint, not paint and photograph? I don't think I've ever used a camera in my life. I mean, it's repellent to me. The idea of the line, of the color, this is you being God, my friend. I don't mean to be grandiose. But when you are painting, you are God, as long as you are not faking it, as long as the you know, when a Picasso or a Braque or a Juan Gris or any of those cubists start working, they are not working the way you think they're working with some, ruler or anything, or their cortex, their creative cortex is bursting open. They don't have any stricture anymore that they have to make a tree like Corot, whose trees, of course, are marvelous and weren't like trees at all. But by that time, you were able to, distort anything you want. We, all painters, that's why the 20th century art is so far above 20th century music. It's a joke what music ended its vocabulary with almost nothing to say after, Schoenberg's 12-tone method, which was like, we talked about it last week. He threw all of his students the wrong path. Oh my God, every one of those moderns from Cezanne on post-impressionists, Van Gogh and Gauguin and Sicily, and every one of them pushed everyone into the right road. Seurat's road. And Seurat is, maybe he died at 33. He's one of the greatest painters that ever lived. Doesn't mean he's better than Masaccio, who is actually dying at 28, and he's invented, in a sense, the perspective that we know. He liked the idea that by the development of technique, you would be able to render things so immaculately correct, which worked for a long time, and then no longer had any appeal to the artistic temperament. I mean, if we looked around at all of these things, I could do a portrait of you that was, but there's no excitement for me, no interest, because all it is I can see you better than I could ever draw you, and that's very nice. That's a great piece of craft. So, what's the idea of your canvas as a universe, a little universe, and you have started, you can do it in 1 minute, 5 hours, whatever you want. It is going to be a major production until you realize that it's aesthetically bad.
Is that in part the problem of what the dead end, if I'll call it the dead end, that's posed by Schoenberg to cause the problem in music, that you feel that art doesn't have that same degree of limitation in the 20th and the 21st century?
That's right. No limitation. No, it's the greatest art of all time, that 20th century painting.
So did Schoenberg, in a way, shrink the size of the universe rather than broaden it?
He shrunk it badly.
Yes.
He was a shrinker. He was a wrong path shrinker who was a brilliant mind, of course. And he took these, as we said, he got it all into the university. Every little creature that was a composer in residence was a 12-toner, dodecahonic composer of arranging. Oh my God. Anserme used to say, this is a false aesthetic. And of course it is, because where is the melodies we hum from Lulu? Must have a form of melody. Who was the poet that said the great mystery of man is that he could compose melodies? The greatest things we've ever done are these great melodies that permeate from Bach. They're always different kinds, depending upon if it's Baroque, if it's this. These labels are no good.
Why did it take off, though? Why did it penetrate into every university? Why?
You mean the 12 tone?
Yes.
Him himself.
Well,
he was so good a propagandist of his game that we have to study his life in letters and in every way to show. Right now, the only thing in those fires that the poor son was trying to save was the archives of Schoenberg that was burning up, because in them is not a story of art, but a story of how did that man succeed. When Stravinsky took the 12-tone from Weber and Schoenberg and so forth, when he put it into his humanistic religious mold, remember he would say, I rather have been a small Bach writing religious music than, being the big Stravinsky ballet boy.
Well, see, this brings me full circle to where we began our conversation, and I hope I don't take too big a risk. But if we go back to the risk for the gallant man, specifically the male, romantic, encountering modern woman, it seems to me that there is an analogy between the problem of the feminist and the dodecaphonic composer, in the sense that I have no objection to a woman of gifts being elevated and given every liberty to realize her gifts, but I have an objection to meeting a majority of women who feel that they have a body of work simply because of this propaganda when they don't have a body of work. And it's the same thing for these composers. They have found an artificial means of saying that I have something, you don't understand it, but you have to respect me. Do you think that analogy is sound?
This has separated the mass. I've been screaming before, please listen to your Brahms. I'm not talking about being a conservative or a radical. I'm talking about, please listen, these are the great humanist efforts in history, Beethoven symphonies and sonatas. Brahms works. And my goodness, we don't want to confuse anyone by saying, you know, I'm a music missionary. I have no interest in if you really go home and do it or not. I was just saying you were going to be better off, way better off. Do you believe me? You don't have to believe me. But what Schoenberg did was reprehensible. He destroyed the rest of the music vocabulary to such a degree that, as you said last week, you could not dare do a melody or do some sort of different, you know. Now we had the neo-romantics, you know, in the last, 10 to 12 years, and you see how dated they are because they're just trying now to write out any tunes they can within their piano concertos or symphonies or traditional forms.
But do you think my analogy is outrageous?
No.
All right.
No. Oh no. And I'm going to go back though to because since I have it, we'll never have it again, and I want everyone to hear possibly. I said here, Mom has written that English are not a sexual nation, and he cannot easily persuade them that a man will sacrifice anything important for love. Now, this is incredible because he gave up the throne for love, he told the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, is that really true? Would you give up the throne of England, the greatest empire that had ever been assembled, for good, bad, or anything? We're not talking about racism, colonialism, gold taken out by Leopold of Belgium. Would you give up that title, that pomp, that fun? That's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Oh, I want my shoelaces tied. Would you do that? Oh, yes. Okay, so I'm talking Nancy Democratic. I'm not interested in those things either. I'm interested in the individual and how he functions through his life. His life. And that life is always going to be destroyed in one way or another by what the conventions or the puritanicalisms or what has been conditioned in him. So we have a question here. Would you, Jack Cole, take away your emperorship of India, which Disraeli himself, in great pomp, conferred upon Victoria in 1876? You don't think that Victoria had a great time in her life? Oh, God, yes.
I'm going to suspect, this sounds like boasting, that I would resist the romantic illusion and hold on to my kingdom because
Kingdom is art.
Well, that's the analogy I was going to use, that I don't know, maybe, I'll have to concede I've had a lot of help in my life from advisors who have stepped in to say that perhaps there's a danger here, so to speak, in the pursuit that we're talking about, the gallant pursuit. So I'd like to think that perhaps if I could protect it on that small scale, that if I was also told that I would have all this power to wield for the sake of the good, and I would like to hope that I would wage, the power of an empire for the sake of the good, that I would probably opt to use my gallant force for the sake of tradition, even if people poked fun at the notion that perhaps I hadn't followed my heart. Of course, that's always the American argument, that you should follow your heart.
Follow your bliss.
Yes. Now, I at the same time, I understand, that became very popularized by Joseph Campbell for a while there.
I wish everyone could, but the society refuses to let you do that.
What part of the society prevents it?
All of the society that says you are going to eat your way to obesity, you are going to be only happy when you buy this new product. What's the big deal about the inflation today? Is it about world views? Is it about anything important? Is it about stopping wars? No, it's about, oh my God, my shoes for my children will be double the price and I won't be able to afford them. Well, yeah, that's right, and that isn't good, is it? That means you can't possibly have any leisure time if you have to go out. If you have 5 children, you have to go out and get 5 pairs of shoes and 5, dolls and everything else that they want. You can't do it because you don't have the money, and that means psychologically, such tariffs, let's say, are going to destroy you. There's everything in the society ready to destroy you. Rock and roll is out to destroy you. Don't kid yourself. That's not anything to do with art. It has to do with commerce. Anything that's commerce oriented, as Baudelaire said, it's it is satanic. Every businessman has a moral judgment that what's the word corruption used day and night for? You see, that's all we hear.
Why do you think, David, that now that's something, to me, at the risk of sounding like a prude, as preposterous as rock and roll, now that it's aging, why do you think so many people that I'll meet, that I give them the benefit of the doubt before I hear them speak at length, will also speak of venerable things that I respect, and then speak of that and examples of it as if it's earned its place in the canon?
It has not earned
I agree it
its
hasn't.
place at all. It has no place in the canon.
Well,
it is irrelevant to the canon.
Why do so many people think it's relevant?
Because they've been told that day and night.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just saw today a commercial for the CNN that will be on a documentary called "When Rock on." It's because it sells. I mean, that's all you do. When rock and roll owned the world.
Mm-hmm.
Before that was the rock and roll will live forever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, there are many things I'm not happy with. I don't like a great artist, so to speak. At least I don't know enough about architecture to know if he's a great artist. I am whatever. Who designed the Rock and Roll Museum in Cleveland? If I said to most people in Cleveland, get rid of that Rock and Roll Museum, it's number one, it's ugly. Number two, I don't want to know any creature that had made millions and millions of dollars off of, as Elvis Presley did, off of black music, or many others. I mean, the great black performers were totally neglected, and they were really gifted. Well, there's so many aspects to everything. Pop music is a danger. As Julius Caesar said, cut him for his bad verses.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of him, kill him.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad stuff in society.
Well, who can be our Caesar then?
I'll take the job.
All right. Well, I would offer it.
I certainly am not going to give up I'm not going to give up for a woman, and I truly respect them, and I would have loved to have played the piano for Queen Victoria, and I think she would have liked me.
Mm-hmm.
Prince Albert, it's a shame he didn't live long enough, but there is an Albert Hall, which is disgusting.
Why is that?
It's too big, and air. But
You mean the idea of its echo?
and the only thing I liked about that was the fact that that the first performance ever done was a concerto played by, I think, Eugene Dalbert or Godard, a woman pianist that was great, an English one, Arabella Godard. The first thing ever produced at the Albert Hall was the Emperor Concerto.
Mm.
Well, you see, we're not unhappy to be an emperor. Everyone would love to have been an emperor. They're lying if they're not,
Mm-hmm.
because you could have power, which is the biggest thing anyone has. Everyone in the army that's a sergeant has power over you.
Mm-hmm.
You would never find me in the army.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I would start swimming.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I would take the czarship of an art. I was always very unhappy that Jacqueline Kennedy, not Onassis, Kennedy,
Mm-hmm.
was ever married again into this ridiculous form of marriage thing to another rich man, another rich, powerful man who killed whales. Well, this is not funny to me, the killing of a whale. Young whales. Now, why did she marry a man when she had the power on her own? This is what is important, and she didn't use it. Where she could have gone to Lyndon Johnson or whoever the president would be at that moment, and she would say, Jimmy Carter, I would like to be, for the first time in history, have the job of culture minister of the United States, because our arts, forget all this Kennedy Center bull, our arts are dying by the day, and we don't know what to do with ballet or opera. 2 cities is not enough. Do you imagine a man of the force you are, or of someone equal, that would become the minister of art? That alone would rank the prestige up quickly.
Mhm.
We don't even know what art is. As Kenneth Clark says, we despise art.
How is that?
Well, number one, let's
expressed?
say you're in Minnesota and you've never even seen, a statue of the thinker or anything,
Okay.
and you read in the paper that Richard Nixon or any president is this giving more money to the National Arts Council, and why would he give that money to them? My farm is dying, or
Mhm. Mhm.
the arts have no meaning in this vast country of 3 million square miles, where you can find no audience at all over 40 that could fill a major hall in a Beethoven symphony cycle.
How do we?
That's bad.
It is.
Because art and life, because there is no life without art. We really mean that.
See,
You've got to give me that understanding, because if you don't, then you're just slugging me off. I mean, I deserve that word I hate. We don't deserve anything. But I want, for your sakes, and I'm not a proselytizer, sounds like it, but I know what it can do, and here's a country that will not allow it. We don't have anyone teaching a kid how to sing the tune of the Ninth Symphony's finale. I was once in a subway here, and some little black kid sitting next to me, and he's humming the Ninth Symphony's black. I said, how do you know that? He said, oh, I learned that in school. But he'll never learn the whole thing and never hear it again. As a whole work that could change. Couldn't change. If Goethe could say to a correspondent, hearing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony could crush civilization, this is one of the great comments of all time.
Well, let me ask this. This seems like a conundrum to me. If we imagine that a lot of endowed universities and colleges and conservatories are given grants and money, why did they see something that would shrink the universe so much as, say, the music of Schoenberg? In other words, how do we make the czar of the arts, how do we select that person to prevent those problems so that the arts don't alienate the man on the farm, so that he can't say that though his farm is in crisis, he also thinks hearing what he turns on the radio is also just as important as his crop, unless that czar is well trained. I think there's a tremendous analogy between Jacqueline Kennedy and where we began with.
I could never forgive her for that.
Okay, with the analogy of a prince of, let's say, of Great Britain giving up his crown for a woman. You could argue that she gave up her imagined Camelot crown and married someone and didn't use that authority, as you say, perhaps to present herself to another president as a kind of czar of the arts. So perhaps we could imagine there are two sins there, not doing that, but do we then imagine that she would have made the right choices and given the right things to stop?
No, she would not have done the right choices, because she had no real understanding of what an artist was. You have to, in this new position, be able to be a painter, a writer, especially. You got to be a writer. I want to see their novel. I want to see, I don't care if it's published or if it's a hit. I want to see their mind. I want to see, because Jacqueline Kennedy, I only want her as the figurehead, because I want people like you and me to be her advisors, you see, because we have a larger approach to art. And let me tell you, there is almost no artist in this country that is not starving for just even the smallest recognition, meaning not fame or anything. That destroys most artists. Oh, keep them away from money. Keep artists away from money. Just keep them working at what they know, and let them experience what they are capable of. The biggest artists are the biggest people that we have ever known by far. As Schweitzer said, Bach, eventually the Bach family, which had gone down two centuries before him, would have eventually had to, by Kant's historical method, would have to have produced a Bach for the whole ages. Well, who was going to know, and even in Bach's time, that he was the biggest of the Bach? Telemann, who got the job actually, and then said, let Bach have it. I think Bach was in fourth place to get the job at the St. cantors in Leipzig.
Do we imagine that J.S. Bach was aware of his role as an apotheosis figure?
Who was J.F.? Which?
J.S. Bach. I mean,
J.S.,
if we're
yes.
talking about the...
No, he was not. No, he was just getting frustrated that no one had his craft. Not his son could write fugues the way he did, and there was nothing in life of importance than writing great fugues. And of course, he was right, because there is your supreme intellectual form. In any art, I mean, Schoenberg's biggest thing would be to write a good fugue. Beethoven's was to write a good fugue, because that's the hardest thing to do.
That's amazing you mentioned this, because I was just leafing through, speaking of pianists, of Abram Chasins this morning, and he contends that a fugue is not a form, it's a texture. That struck me. I'm still giving that thought. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, because I don't know if he really knew what he was saying, because I knew him, but
Yes.
Yeah, it's a texture. Could be four voices, then the texture is altered, and all of a sudden you have, in a counterpoint, instead of a Paganini diabolical variation, you have the Rachmaninoff exquisite, too sentimental tune, but it works so fantastically in the structure that you just weep.
I did find myself, after I read the line of Chasins, though I didn't conclude my thinking, wanting to disagree with it. Because it seems like there are obligations in the fugal pattern that do cause vertical columns to occur.
Of course they do, of course. Of course. I'm going to go back, though, again. Remember,
Yes.
I've tried, and this is, I think, so interesting.
Yes.
Yes, these diagnoses are true about, the British nation, or Mom says, there is an added reason for Miss Austen's popularity. The name of this is, the Austen and Myth. There has probably never been a more ferocious debunker of passionate or sexual love than Jane Austen in the four central novels. The charming but worthless lovers in the first four central novels have already been listed, and so forth. In four of the books, the heroine is attracted momentarily by the stereotype, while in two, Mansfield Park and Persuasion, later on, she resists their insidious sexual charm, the man. She resists it. But in all sexual love is portrayed for her, all sexual love is portrayed as a snare and a sham, leading only to guilt, misery, and cooled affections. Well, that may well be so for a woman as puritanical and as gifted as Jane Austen. But what about the women today?
Well, I'm glad you read that, because I think it's always a misfortune when people in college lectures group Austen with the feminist, or the concept of woman as a generality. She's a gifted human being.
Yes.
So as an artist, she has the right to be her self-protector.
Yes.
So in that case, she's infinitely attractive, both as woman and member of humankind. And that there I will condescend to say humankind, so that the generality is there. However, one can't make her a subject of feminist studies, because her gifts cannot be given wholesale to all women. They are exclusive to her. So she had the power to ascend over whatever may have been the imagined structure that may have sublimated someone else who already had limitations. So I don't think with someone with the gifts of an Austen, anything could stop her. I think a true artist can't be stopped, and she was her own protector. Did I answer? I feel like you posed the question now.
No, this is exactly true. And I love it, because Jane Austen, you don't say Jane.
No.
You must say Jane Austen. out of the great respect of a great artist. I hate in literature, in every article, a man is always called by his second name, and the woman is always Clara. I mean, Clara Schumann is never Clara Schumann Wieck or anything. She's always Clara. Clara. You must say Clara Schumann.
Yes.
These people demand the same respect in name calling of their names in literature or articles or whatever. Austen, notice, lives only till about 43 or something like that. Was in complete control of her life. She understood all of these insidious possible charms, and she did not, which was, wow, that was not something so simple not to do. She was just at the right class that she could marry and not end up being a governess, let alone, God knows, a prostitute. Jane Austen did not marry for very good reasons, and that was she could never again be the writer that had the time to write. As soon as she had children, it'll be over. I'm not saying that no woman has not had children that did not write or was not, successful. I'm talking about this as a great general thing that must be thought about.
Yes.
Is your art important enough to go against society's great desire for a woman to have a child? And why should she have a child? She's never thought about it, except she can have a child. Oh, if you could have a child, you would have it too, probably, or me. I mean, okay, every man in the world is envious in one way or another that he's not the creative force. We cannot be everything. I don't know what has told this society that it could be everything. We had that moment in time maybe 3 centuries ago when knowledge was just a little bit, and every human being that had any quality would be able to learn everything about everything almost. We cannot even take a little bit. You'd be lucky to hear all of Beethoven's works.
True.
Let alone play them. We don't have the time in this post-industrial society, which just tears us apart with passivity with baseball games.
Yeah.
You think I would go to a baseball game, although I was a talented baseball game? You have to grow up. You can't sit in the stands and wait for a fouled ball to come out there so you can, come home with a baseball. Oh, come on. Get to it. Start playing the piano.
Agreed. Well, David, again, I think we've touched on a lot.
I think we have another YouTuber.
We do.
We want you, please, because, again, I don't deserve anything. You do. But we really need your support. We want you to tell your friends how you came upon us, how you came upon a star, so to speak, and a gem. And we want you to subscribe, and we want to survive, because I think this kind of talk can refresh some people instead of the dreary dross of American political machines. Let's get rid of all politics, meaning we don't, or I really mean we really must revise the whole thing quickly. A new kind of government, preferably with you, Jack, as president and me advisor to the arts.
Well,
forgive me for my madness.
Thank you. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you and speaking with you next week.
Please contact us. This is David Duval, as my radio show says. This is every time I end my radio show, if you've ever heard it, this is David Duval. Thank you for listening.